I'm gonna completely forget her name. I think it's Gabriela Garcia. She's a woman in Arizona. To like both your guys' specific points. She was, like myself, in deportation hearings. Our cases were administratively closed during the Obama era, right? He sort of administratively closed a bunch of cases because the courts are so backed up. You know, non-priority cases got put at the bottom of the list, and just like to sort of clear the system.
Well, it's not a great use of government money.
Exactly. You know, if you haven't committed a crime, I think if you haven't committed a felony, and you know, you've paid taxes and you kind of demonstrate that you're a contributing person in American society, like you're not at risk. So let's just like deal with you like much later. And that's a weird place to be in, but it's certainly better than, you know, being deported. But part of her terms were that she would go in and check with Homeland Security periodically, just to say kind of a parole, if you will, right? Like, I still live here, I still work here. Like, you know, she has 3 kids, I think, who were born here. And she went in for her regular checkup. And this happened like days before my deportation hearing too. So it was like, and within the week that he signed Trump signed the executive orders about, the travel ban also. It was just like a really fraught week. But she went in for a regular checkup, and the moment she sort of signed her name, they put handcuffs on her, like with her family outside the door and a bunch of people who were just kind of watching, like there in support. Like, and she just fully knew going into that, like, there's a real possibility that I'm not going to walk out those doors after I walk in. And sure enough, like, that's what happened.
And like, what does that achieve? You now have kids in custody of the state, which is a draw on tax dollars. Mm-hmm. You have the expense.
I think she's married.
Is she? Okay. Yeah. But
that's what happens, right?
Yeah, that's what happens. You end up with people now who are costing more than, I think I saw a figure that immigrants in the United States pay something like $5 billion a year in taxes or something. It's some like outrageous number. Yeah.
You mean immigrants are an important part of the American economy?
Yeah, really interesting.
Boy, that's so strange.
Well, and I think that's a really good thing to point to too. I was on a bit of a tweet storm recently because I just saw so many people who were talking about like, well, my parents came here legally, so why don't you just do the same? And it's like, immigration in the United States has long been used as a tool of racism. Like, that's it. Like, it is a weapon of racism. It was with the Chinese Exclusion Act. It was when they determined that, African Americans who had been brought here and who had lived here for years could not be naturalized until like 1870. Like 100 years later, they could not be naturalized, right? And this idea that if you make it harder for people to report crimes, then you're making a lawless government. In the same way, when you make it hard to immigrate, you are making it more likely for people to live outside the law.
Right. And that means you're driving down wages because these people are working for lower wages, which drives down the rest of our wages.
Or they're working under the table, which means they're not paying their income tax in states that have them.
But let's be clear, economically, and these statistics are clear not just in the U.S., but across the world. Immigrants start more businesses. Mm-hmm. Those businesses hire more people. Immigrants file more patents. When you look at the American economy, you look at Silicon Valley, and you see these companies, who's founding them, who's leading them, who's doing much of the tech. These are immigrants who are creating companies like Google.
Yeah. Right. Well, you don't even have to look to Silicon Valley. You can look here in Seattle. I mean, one of the things that the travel ban indicated was a bunch of Amazon employees got held up because they have HB visas, right? And so like a lot of Seattle's growth that we're seeing now, and these are people who are buying property for large amounts of money, who are paying sales tax when they buy all their stuff, when they buy their flipping Teslas and shit. Mm-hmm. Like, these are people who are paying hugely into the tax base, and, they're here on a work. Isn't it true that most people who are undocumented in the United States, they came legally and then like their visa expired, or
most people are not crossing the swimming across the river. Yeah. They are arriving. Right. They're flying in and they're arriving on
and going through customs.
Education, tourist, work visas, and then just overstaying.
Yeah. To your point about like this immigration fight sort of being the nexus of like race in America, right? I think like part of why there's so much anxiety on, frankly, both sides of the argument, right, is that we're at this tipping point where over 50% of American children are brown.
Yeah.
Right. And so like there is this real, the browning of America meets like a majority or at least a plurality of immigrants being brown. You see that, they're coming from Mexico. They're coming from Syria. Most of these H-1 work visa people are, again, brown immigrants. And so there's like a very real bad guy, right, in this fight.
A funny story is though, the United States did not used to be a country of white people.
What?
I know that this is shocking to you. This idea that the browning of America is somehow necessarily
You mean Christopher Columbus
thing.
didn't just show up and was like,
He did
America.
not sailed the ocean blue and then found a bunch of wasps and was just like, hello, fellow Protestants. I adore your critter pants. Let us eat macaroni and cheese. No, that's not what happened.
You mean it wasn't just always a land of Puritans?
It was not.
Oh, come on. It was manifest destiny.
Right.
Yeah, so I just think it's very important when we talk about, this, we talk about sanctuary cities or welcoming cities to discuss all of this and all of the bigger parts, because it's not just because it feels good and it's
Right. So that brings back to the symbolism of being a welcoming city or a welcoming state. Just ask you, would you feel comfortable with your current status? If you were offered a great job in Phoenix, what do you think?
It'd have to be a really killer job. I wouldn't want to live in a place where my day-to-day existence was a threat to my existential one. Right.
So this gives cities like Seattle a competitive advantage economically, because we can attract the best and the brightest regardless of their immigration status. And they're contributing to our economy here, and they're making our businesses stronger. And they're a big part of why Seattle is growing so much faster than the rest of the country.
It should be said, though, that the culture of fear is what they want, right? They want people to look at Arizona and think, I don't want to move there, because, they're not looking to increase ICE staffing by 5,000% or anything. They just want to scare people.
And it's working, right?
And it's working.
There's the numbers in terms of immigrants over the last several months, they're much lower than they historically have been. Right. Year over year, it's declined. I forget the specific number, but it's working. He's mucking up the waters.
That's kind of like what Mitt Romney was talking about when he was talking about self-deportation, isn't it? Sort of.
But also Trump's immigration policies, part of the goal is to punish blue cities like Seattle and San Francisco. Correct. This is an attack not just on our people and our values, but on our economy, because we did not vote for him.